How would you like to achieve your first million? And today we have a special guest, Derrick Kinney. He made a bold move. He sold one of the nation's top financial advisory firms to give hardworking Americans a proven path for middle class to millionaire. As an American financial educator, Derrick has a knack for making a complex financial topics refreshingly easy to understand and maybe have even fun. He is regularly seen in Fox, CNN, CNBC, bringing insights from Wall Street to the main street. So, Derek, tell us, what are the 5 steps to make your first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
Harry, first of all, thanks for having me today. I'm so excited to be with you and to share this with your audience. You know, it's interesting. I didn't come from the cloth of the typical millionaire. It wasn't living hand to mouth, but I really wanted to change my life. I wasn't happy being stuck in a 9-to-5 job, and until the pain is great, the change does not occur. The pain became great for me, and therefore I had to make a change and bet on myself. And so the 5 things I discovered as I reflected back on how did I become a millionaire at age 37? Number 1 was setting clear goals, getting a clear path of what is it that I want, and not what other people told me I should want or what I thought I should want, but what is it that I really wanted. And I set an income goal of becoming a millionaire. And I set an income goal of how much recurring revenue do I want every year? And what does that look like in a couple areas: spiritual, personal, physical, financial, even in my business. All those key areas of my life, I wanted to have a tangible goal. Second, I realized I needed to have a good relationship with rejection. I needed to not look rejection as the bad person, but embrace rejection as a close friend and realize rejection was going to be walking alongside me throughout my entire life. I could either choose to make rejection the enemy or embrace it as a friend and say, you're going to be with me, but you're going to make me a better version of me and stronger. Therefore, rejection is one of my best relationships. And third, what problem was I uniquely qualified to solve for people? And I realized that looking at my parents and watching them struggle and work hard to provide for us as a family, and then I saw their friends struggle and so forth, and I realized that wasn't right. So many Americans, middle-class, hardworking people, wanted to retire, but there wasn't a pathway to do that to achieve true financial freedom. I said to myself, that's just not right. And so I began to develop my skills and get licensed as a financial advisor so I could solve that problem, help hardworking people achieve financial freedom. And a lot of them wanted me to help them. And that's what grew one of the top financial planning firms in the country. But then I had a problem. And the problem I had was, who could pay for me to solve their problem? It wasn't enough to set a goal and make resistance a good relationship and find people to work with. I needed people to pay me who would put money to me to help them solve a problem. So that became, how do I determine my specialty, which is what I realized was becoming an expert in a very narrow field of finance, not being the general practitioner to everybody, but being the specialist, the surgeon, if you will, for retirement planning. And then last, reminding myself on a regular basis, what impact do I want to have? Because there's days where the plan could look flawlessly executed, but am I on the right path? Am I impacting lives? And I picture myself like in all these great movies where the main character laments as they're laying on their dying bed, if only I had done this, if only I had done this, and my regrets. I wanted to have a rejection life. I wanted to have no regrets at all, and make sure that I'd rather risk it and be rejected than wonder what would have happened if I had risked it and never been rejected. And so those are my 5 key things that guided me an average guy with a really big nose who had to fight for everything they got to build relationships to become a millionaire.
Wow. Rejection, the biggest fear of entrepreneurs out there. Several entrepreneurs choose to hide behind the product, to develop a bigger product and put a lot of money and effort into that product, and they never take it to market because in the end of the day it's that fear to face the market, it's that fear of facing rejection when stopping them, and unfortunately 90% of the business fail in the first 2 years just because of this step that you just honestly share with us, Derek. So I want you to expand a little bit more. Why, when did you took that? Because let's face it, if you go out there and try to sell the product and people tell you no and no and no and no, and you have to pay bills and you are all alone, and then your family said telling you go and find a job, and then you keep going and going, and it's no, 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 no. How, where do you find the strength, and what message do you have for our fellow entrepreneurs listening the broadcast? How to overcome the fear of rejection? In my opinion, the biggest fear of entrepreneurs have in order to succeed.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you two stories, Harry. First of all, when I first became a financial advisor, someone gave me some wise advice because back in those days, it was all about picking up the phone, calling people, and it was just rejection, rejection, rejection. Here we spent all this time getting licensed and educated, and I sort of thought I would need a separate phone for all the people calling in asking, could you be my financial advisor, Derek? It was completely the opposite. And what he said was, well, it's funny. What he said was, make the phone your friend. The phone is your friend. Because I came into this training program with CEOs who left their companies to become a financial advisor, top executives, business owners. And I felt like, oh my gosh, how can I possibly compare to them? And a year later, I was the only one left standing.
Wow.
And it was because I made the phone my friend and I made rejection my relationship partner. It's because of the expectation I went into it with, this is going to be hard. There are pieces of this that are hard, but it's because they're hard, and I label them as such, that why so many people, I think, fail out. And so that's what led me to that. But also what I realized was, look, Derek, you have no other option. You backed yourself into a corner. You left the salaried job. When you leave the salaried job, you leave the well-worn path, and now you carry a machete with you, and you're going through the forest yourself. And so another story I would share with you is I'm real involved in our local Rotary Club here in Arlington, Texas. And they asked me to host a World War II panel. And so we had a couple older veterans on the panel. And Harry, one thing, I get emotional thinking about this. One thing he said to me hit home that I think about almost every day. And he said, Derek, when you're in a foxhole and you have the enemy shooting bullets that are blazing past your head, and then when you come back to America and you need to pick up the phone to call someone, it's so easy. Because I just
Absolutely.
risked my life over there, calling people here in a sales position and getting rejected is nothing. And so that whole analogy gave me such a great perspective on,
Mm-hmm.
you think rejection is so personal, and rejection isn't personal at all. It's personal about them. It's nothing on you at all. You caught them in a moment where maybe they feel embarrassed. Maybe you caught them off guard, but there's no negative reflection that you should take on in any sales call at all on you. And as long as you realize that, it makes it easy to just say, tell me yes, tell me no, tell me quick so I can go.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not about you. It's just you're just opening a proposal to the client,
That's right.
and there are only two choices, yes or no. And the other thing is math, right? So we have to be realistic on the percentage of conversion that we're gonna make, because if we are thinking that we're gonna make 100 calls and we're gonna convert the whole 100 calls, and if this doesn't happen, then we are bad and we are not good enough, and let me give up and let me find a job. We are now facing the reality that these conversion rates have statistics, and despite that you are excellent, let's say in cold calling or calling the friend, calling the prospect, there is a set, you guarantee you have a large percentage of the people that will tell you no. I have a friend that usually he was telling me, Harry, don't worry, get 100 no, you will see the yes will come. That's what
Yes.
he was telling me. He was telling me,
Go.
don't
Right.
worry too much about the no. Just go and get 100 no's, and you will see. If the no is what is affecting you, go and get 100 of them. Yeah, and you will see how the magic happens. So in the end of the day, even trying to get the embracing the no's, the yes will come. But I love the analogy because sometimes we think that life is difficult, but don't get me wrong. As entrepreneurs, we face 80%, 90% or more pressure than everyone out there because we do have to deal with rejection. If you have a job, you have to deal with rejection. You
Right.
just do your role, you get paid, and you don't have to deal with that. So entrepreneurs, we have a lot of challenges. So then, Derek, when people are telling you no, yeah, you did them because I've been there. Every single person that have business has been there. That when you start to face, especially at the beginning, when you start in the business and the clients are telling you no, or if they want to buy, they want to buy for a little money because nobody knows you. And on the other hand, the suppliers are giving you prices more expensive, and you are in this trying to break through. But all this negativity comes to you, all this no, no, no. Do you find when do you find out? Because one of your steps was mindset. When do you find out that you do have to work on yourself, that you have to, let's say, delete the negative emotion that come out of this process? You have to embrace it, release them, and next day come to work. For example, for me, I spent years uh, accumulating all this negative emotion. Don't get me wrong, my company was doing well. We managed to sell over 5 million in the real estate, but I took a hit. I took a hit building that company. All these negative emotions were there. And after a while, after years, I realized that, okay, I need to start to go for a walk. I need to start to do something in order to start to release um, all this process. So when do you find out that you do have to work on your mindset? Did you read any book? It was so. What happened?
Well, let me go back a step, Harry, because I think you teed that up so well. One thing that I want everyone to hear, and I think millionaires will relate to this, is that you are often the most misunderstood person in your family and in your friend group. So I'll tell you a quick
100%.
story. So my wife and I have four kids, and they're all four entrepreneurs. And we were having lunch one.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
it's it's a really cool story. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in our family. It's funny, just yesterday we had a little roundtable discussion for 15 minutes about a business idea. So it just breaks out all the time, but we're all supportive of each other's different businesses, which is really, really cool as a family, by the way. But nonetheless, so I asked our kids at lunch, I said, out of the blue, I said, do you guys ever feel misunderstood? Harry, you could have heard a pin drop in the burger shop. And they were like, yes, we do all the time. And I said, first of all, let me tell you, that's normal because you chose the alternative path. You didn't choose the path of I'm going to just go to college and get the salaried job. Two of them went to college, two didn't. But now they're both realizing they don't want to be trapped in a company job. They want to have no ceiling on their income. But what that comes with is no roadmap. They have to create the map themselves. And I said, it's not that people are dismissing you, it's they don't understand how someone could take risk like you did because their parents told them, take the salary job, get the benefits, get the good retirement plan. You're seeing your mom and dad do the opposite of that. Therefore, for you, it looks completely normal not to go down the beaten path, but to other people, that doesn't make sense. So realize that's normal and very common, and that you're not the bad person, nor are they. They just don't understand you. Okay, that's number one. Number two is realize that even if I'm going to make 50 calls in a day, the game is not about the rejection. The game is it's a treasure hunt. I know that someone right now is waiting for me. They need me. They need me to uniquely solve their financial pain, and they're hoping someone can reach them. And my job as sort of a pain seeking detective is to find that person by my calling or asking for referrals so I can help that person. And if I don't do that, I literally believe this, I'm doing them a disservice. If they don't work with me, I've done them dirty, is how I
Mm-hmm.
say it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the whole mindset is it's not just calling people, beating your head against the wall. It's I'm seeking out people who I can actually help because I'm about to improve their life. What I would tell you is, and this ties into your question, Harry, is if you are just calling people and you're not getting any results, it is a numbers game, but you want to make sure you're playing at your A game. Okay, so what I would do is have people listen to you on how you talk specifically, and please don't miss this, specifically your tonality, how empathetic and how relatable and how connected do you feel to someone when you talk to them? Do they feel like this person gets me? This person understands my pain. They're not just selling me something, they're listening actively to find a way to help take away my pain and solve my problem. If you do those things, you're probably going to see your engagement rates go up and you'll attract more clients, the ones that you want to work with.
I agree 100%. I teach communication skills all over the world, and I can tell you that exactly these little things that you are sharing with us, like tonality, how to use the tone, how you pause, how you trying to what we call it mix and match, right? So on the
Yes.
other side of the phone, you have someone very energetic. You do need to try to to mirror that person, and at the same time, if you have someone more calm, is a skill. The more you practice, the better you become. We're not going to say that it's extremely difficult, because it's not, but it does require practice, and requires commitment. The other thing there is, which is very important, is what you just described. You know that if they don't buy from you, they're gonna buy from someone that is not gonna look after them better than you.
That's
You
right.
know that. You know that. And when if you taking the call with that intention, you really believe that your product can change and solve the problem for that client. You're gonna embrace the phone call with everything you got, because you know this is how we see it in our business. We know we know that when somebody buys the product or service from us, we know that there is no way that they can find something out there that's gonna look after them better than us. We do know
Right.
that for a fact. So we have to embrace a conversation with this client in order to articulate effectively the value and fight for it. Fight for it, not for us, for the client,
That's
because
right. I like that.
we know the massive difference that we can make to their life. On the other hand, Derry, I want to congratulate you because wow, what a role model for the kids. Um, I think in this broadcast, if you look back over the 500 millionaires that we have interviewed, we see that really 90% of them is maybe like you and me. I went to, my parents are teachers, so the whole narrative in my house was you go to school, you go to university, you find a job, and that's it. So I did to spend 5 years of university. I gave the diploma to my mom and dad. They're very happy. I never used it again in my life. Made them very happy. I
I know.
waste 5 years to make them happy. But anyway, this is how. But I have been facing this challenge, and you and your kids also, when you open the conversation about nobody understand you. So when I started my first business, I remember when I was with my friends, and then everybody was talking. I'm chatting with everybody, we are laughing, and then I it was my time to talk, and I said, "Look, I started this business. I have in this property business. I have these clients. This is what I'm doing." and nobody cares.
Right,
They
right.
couldn't care less. And so then I'm thinking, wow, that's going to be interesting. I'm about to lose all my friends. So it was a very lonely journey because I didn't even know that there were, you see, more entrepreneurs. There is no entrepreneurial background in my family. And so I had to kind of discover everything by myself. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, but he died when I was very young, so I couldn't really talk to him. Yeah, but then this sense of loneliness, this sense of nobody understand me, because then you're gonna talk to. I remember my mom when I said, "Mom, I'm gonna expand." My mom it was like, "Don't expand. I don't want to hear expansion. Don't do
Mm,
that. Leave it as it is. It's enough." That's what I was hearing with my mom. She doesn't know what is a business. She doesn't know what expansion means. She doesn't know anything, but because they're trying to protect you. On the other
right,
hand, I think
right.
regardless the political views that anyone can have, I think that the son of Donald Trump's or that family is just growing up in different contexts. The conversation in this family all the time is clients, tax, customer service, new products, how to generate income, how to pay the employees, how many employees we're gonna have. So that's the conversation that you hear in in this family, right? Which is pretty much kind of the conversation that your kids are listening you as a role model, seeing you grow your business. This is what they are a reflection of you. They become now they want to make you proud, and the only way to make you proud is to be a good entrepreneur, right? And I'm so glad that they did took the path because it will change their life. They can they're gonna have about to experience a life that very few people can experience just because of having that mechanism. Because at the end of the day, they can amplify as much as they want. If they want to make multi-millions, they want to make this. But number one, they have the freedom to choose, and now that fear that is out there, facing the client or facing rejection, they have at home a role model that can tell them, "Look, I understand you, and it's okay." So, how uh, uh, do you think that and four of them, all of them decide to be an entrepreneur? That's very impressive. So, what do you think in the way that you see business and the relationship with your family? Something happened there that inspired them, all of them, to become an entrepreneur. What do you think it was?
Well, it's interesting, Harry. I had an aha moment a couple years ago, and this was at the peak of COVID. All of our kids came back home. We're having dinner around the table, and we do a thing as a family that often families do called highs and lows. We'll go around, and each person says, "Here's my high of the day and my low of the day." And I had this realization that my explanation of what I was doing during the day was pretty boring and non-attention
Nobody
getting.
cares, no.
Nobody cares. And I said, I need to kind of change this. And so I had placed an investment in something recently and lost a couple $1,000s. And I thought, I'm gonna share that with the kids. And so I talked about my day and I said, hey, by the way, guys, dad lost a lot of money today. And you could have heard a pin drop. They're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. Dad finally screwed up. We can't wait to hear this.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I shared with them a couple, here's what happened. I lost a couple $1,000s. And what I realized was this whole time I had been acting like I need to be the perfect parent to teach my kids the perfect lessons. And what I realized was I was becoming unrelatable. And my kids were thinking, if I don't share these mistakes with them, I realized they're going to grow up and make the same mistakes and they're going to think the problem is with them. And what
Hmm.
I realized was instead of kind of lecturing my kids on, hey, here's this great business idea or here's this business wisdom, I would share with them, hey, can I tell you guys about a mistake I made? Suddenly they love to listen to mistakes that mom or dad make. And that became my tool for educating my kids. So, for example, as opposed to sitting my son down on the
Hmm.
couch and saying, let me share this lesson with you. I'd say, hey, let's go to Whataburger and listen to your favorite playlist. And while we're not even looking at each other in eye contact, we're just talking straight ahead, ideas come out. They're like, now, Dad, you said you lost some money. How did you do that? Or tell me about your business. And so these intentionally unintentional lesson-based conversations were the key. And what I realized, the more vulnerable I was as a parent, the more I could tell them, hey, here's a mistake I made. If I could redo this, then they're interested in the business because they see you doing the hustle. I realize that more is caught than taught. They saw me doing the business. They saw my reputation being built in the community. They saw the highs and lows. But to hear me talk about the mistakes, it just made them feel normal. Like, oh, this is normal and how an entrepreneur thinks. There's at 9 o'clock, you may be flying high. At 9:05, you've gone straight to hell in a handbasket. At 9:10, you're back up again. That's the life of the entrepreneur. So once my kids knew that and I connected with them and said, I don't have to be perfect, that changed everything for me. And I think it made it more palatable to be like, oh my gosh, Dad is normal just like us. And that was my goal.
Wow, that's really impressive because at the end of the day, when you find a joins for relatedness, they are receptive to the conversation and they start to discover what it's gonna take to become an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And they start to realize that things are not gonna be perfect and this is a skill. The more you practice, the better you become. Now, Derek, talking about finance, I think that we as entrepreneurs sometimes we made um, this wrong assumption that we have a business. The business start to make money, and because entrepreneurs they are no expert in finance, they are just entrepreneurs. They know how to create a product and how to sell it. It might happen that after you had that product and this product start to sell it, a usual mistake that entrepreneurs make is they take all the money from that business and reinvest it in the business. Whether something more creative could be, for example, take the money from that business for using for the business that you make, buy a property to give you an example, use this cash flow to reinvest in the business. So if something happened to the business in the future, you still have the asset producing you income. Um, what do you think about this this idea? Because you, for example, have a wonderful business and you managed to exit. Um, Most of the businesses does they don't achieve that. They don't have an exit, and they go out of business. And after all this work, it's not fair that the entrepreneur sometimes um, walk away with nothing after so many years of work. Something might happen, COVID, the market can change. So where this financial education goes, and where uh, people with normal income, as long as they start to understand some principles of how to handle their finance, like you describe in your bio, they can become a millionaire, and it's not that difficult, right?
Well, I think what I would say is it can be difficult, but let me tell you a quick story to illustrate this. So as I would work with millionaires in my office, one of the things that would commonly cause them to lose business is they would say, Derek, I've decided to build my own house. We've decided to build a building. And what would happen is their distraction going to the next shiny object would
Mm-hmm.
actually cause them to have a lower year in business that year because they're worried about where the brick is in their chimney or where the fence line is in their yard or why the color scheme isn't like they want it to be in their new building. And what I would tell them is you can do that, but there is a risk you need to be aware of. And that is what you are good at, the lane that you need to
Mm-hmm.
be in. You need to
Mm-hmm.
keep that lane well worn. You are in the money creation business. That's your business. You help solve problems for a profit. If you get out of that lane, you run the risk of being in an accident that could cost business money. And so, not that you can't do it, but I say that for business owners, especially, to be aware to manage their own issues. Think of it like a bowling alley. You know the lane you're in. You want to have some good gutters on the side to protect you.
You have to keep it tight, right?
Keep it tight. And so, what I found is if you want to invest in real estate, that's great. But you need to go to your friend in your mastermind group, at church, at Rotary, the person you respect the most, and say to them, what's the easiest way for me to get involved in real estate? What you don't want to do, please remember this. If you take nothing else away from our time together, you don't want to be the person studying and doing the courses and going to the
Absolutely,
classes, because you're going to waste the main lane you're good at. And so that's the decision you've got to make. Now, I've not ever really been a big real estate guy. I like stocks and I like pre-IPO investments and I like things where
That's
there's,
another vehicles also.
yeah. And so that was in my lane because I was in investing in money. So it was a perfect lane for me. So I would just tell people that the more successful you get, part of your job is discerning quickly great opportunities and good opportunities. And good opportunities are veiled and disguised cleverly as great opportunities. But only the top 1/2 of any opportunity is what you should ever put your brain cells to burn to see if it makes sense for you. If not, you're going to simply waste your time on things that have no way to really level up your lane of genius.
Good morning. What a title for the book. Tell us what the book is about. What is your favorite chapter and what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so it's interesting. How I came on this book was having worked 25 years in building a financial planning practice, which ended up being one of the top in the nation because we solved problems for people. It wasn't about selling stuff, it was solving problems. And as I would talk to people who we helped go from middle class to millionaire, one of the common things they would say, Harry, and this actually shocked me, is they would say, Derrick, it seems like a lot of people make the point that if you have a lot of money, you must have done something bad to earn it. Or if you like money, you must be a bad person because the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. I said, well, we're not loving money, we're liking money a lot. And I said, if you're like a well-respected CEO of a huge company, you must be oppressing your workers and taking all the money for yourself. And I said, well, that's not right. That voice is a voice that tells people, don't take risk, don't create jobs, and don't take your bold, courageous idea and make something big. And so that's what the whole point is, that money is not bad. And good people like you and me, Harry, and all of our great listeners should have more of it. And what
Absolutely.
I found is that the motivation, though, is really what I hone in on the book. And then I'll tell you about my favorite chapter. But the motivation is that if you make it your goal to build a bulging bank account and have a 7+ figure investment account, and you sacrifice your family and your own personal interests and your relationships, and you arrive at the mountaintop and you look around and your voice echoes because you're all by yourself. You've sacrificed everything to get there, and you realize, wait a minute, I thought I would have more meaning and purpose in my life when I hit this goal. And so what I found is that the whole book is about flipping that over, changing the script to say, go make more money, go make a lot of it by serving a whole lot of people, but make your motivation to go make more money and then do more good with it. To tie your cash to a cause and your profits to a purpose and your money to a movement where it's something that you care deeply about, and use that to motivate you, that the more money you make, the more you can actually give. And what happens is when people you want to work with know that you're a giver, it automatically attracts them to want to work with you. So I call that the good money revolution, where the more money you make, the more you give, the more that you give, the more motivated you are to make. And it's just this circle. But the favorite chapter in the book is chapter 5. And it's about one of my clients. His name is Dave. And Dave came in the office. And you know those relationships, Harry, that without the person saying a word, you can tell by their body language that something's wrong. You can just tell they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And I said, Dave, what's wrong? And he said, Derrick, he had this successful business, but he told me he wasn't feeling motivated anymore to go to the office. He was just kind of faking it. And he wasn't feeling purpose or meaning in his life. And for whatever reason, the words kind of shot out of my mouth. And I said, Dave, is there a cause that you care deeply about? And he began to tell me a story. And he said, Derrick, a couple years ago, my family and I went on a trip overseas. And in this village we were at, the guide told us that this whole area has so much poverty, but it's because they don't have a school building to educate their kids. And if they had a dedicated schoolhouse, it would change everything. And he remembered exchanging a glance with his wife as if to say, wouldn't it be cool to fund that school? Well, they got back to the States, life got busy, etc. But my question brought this all back. And I said, Dave, what if you did this? What if you set an aggressive sales increase goal? And you said, we're going to increase sales by 20% this year, and half of that is going to go to fund that school. Well, his eyes got as big as saucers. We began to brainstorm how to do this. So he comes in the office not 6 months later, but 3 months later.
Wow.
He looked completely different. He looks younger. He looks invigorated. He looks like he's got his A game back. And I said, Dave, what happened? He said, well, I basically took what you talked about and put it into practice. And what he did is he made a tab on his company website. I told him to call it your generosity purpose. And he mocked up a picture of this school building and what it could look like. And he began to let all of his clients know that, hey, this year we have dedicated and created what we call a generosity purpose. A portion of all of our profits are going to go to fund this school and make a difference in the lives of these people.
In the community.
Well, his customers loved it. And then he got more referrals because he wasn't the only consultant in town, but because people could work with him and feel like they were part of something bigger, and made them want to work with Dave. And so what happened was Dave himself got completely remotivated. Now he had a purpose for his work. It wasn't just making money, but it was making more money to do more good, which let him make more money. And then his team got excited, his family got excited. But what happened was ultimately Dave's business began to skyrocket, but he felt meaning and purpose because he was making a difference. So I would tell people is, if you're listening right now, go make the $1 million, build the bulging bank account. But if you don't tie purpose to your profits and meaning to your money, you're going to have this feeling of dissatisfaction and you're going to wonder what's missing. But when you're giving, then you're truly living.
100%. So where can we find the book? And if somebody's in love with this conversation, Derrick, where can they find you? How the process works? Can you share a little bit more with us?
You bet. Yeah, the book is available on Amazon. It came out about 2 years or so ago. It was a USA Today, a Wall Street Journal bestseller.
Wow.
But it's a great book. It's like having a conversation with a friend over a cup of coffee. It's about how to think about money, but especially if you're a business owner. And I like to call, if you're a millionaire in training, or if you're already a millionaire and you want to go to the next level, this book helps reshape the purpose of why you want to make money. And we find it's supercharging people's growth quite a bit. But the two best places to find us is our website, which is anyonecanbecomeamillionaire.com. And
wow,
also
I love the title.
Thank you. Anyonecanbecomeamillionaire.com, and also on Instagram at the Derrick Kinney.
Thank you so much, Derrick. And with that, see you if to our listeners and of you following our social media. See you in our next episode of Unstoppable, how brave entrepreneurs like Derrick break that wall and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.